Lake Harriet is pleased to bring you Sandy Wolff.
Happy to be here in this community, and usually I would start my presentation or time today with some great opening. And today I think I'll start with a bit of a confession. And I think that dancing to the beat of your own drum, the topic for this month, is wonderful. And so we're going to take a journey, as Neil alluded to, that word journey. And we're all in different places in our journey. And my confession is this. At first, I didn't really want to come to do this sort of a topic, or to this group, I should say. And I remember politely declining several times because I didn't feel not even capable, but like that I would fit in. Because I don't see blobs, I don't see energy blocks. I'm probably intuitive, and maybe that stuff just hasn't opened up yet. But I would consider myself in the society on the more normal spectrum of that, of being closed down to that kind of thing. So what can I talk to these people? So my second confession is that I've changed what I wanted to say about 3 times this week. And so who knows what this journey over the next 40 minutes is actually going to look like. And so I thought the best thing, and Lori was kind enough to tell me in an email, because I said, I don't think this group is just right for me. I haven't done the spiritual church talk for many, many, many moons. So usually it's leadership and business and that circle, which quite awesomely, spirit always comes into that, whether you're talking about it or not. So, but Lori said, just come and share your story. So I thought it appropriate that I do so. Because when we are sharing our story, I share my story, and we're all in relation with each other. So it's also your story, and your tragedies, and your challenges. And so I start today with the notion that it's time. It's time for all of us, on one level or another, to start dancing to the beat of our own drum. And here is my third confession. One of the reasons that I didn't want to come right now in this period of my life is because sometimes we go through changes so quickly that we don't feel strong enough to stand on the stage ourselves. And so today, as I talk, I invite all of you to experience this for yourself in your own heart and your own story, because that's what I will be sharing, is just what's coming out of my heart. And that might come up in many ways. There are times that I'll stand on a big stage and be totally solid. And there'll be other times that I stand on the big stage, and all of a sudden, before I know it, I have my own tears shedding. And where did that come from? We don't know. So who knows what will come up today, but I invite you to experience that with me. And so when I mean it's time, it's today I invite you on the journey of my life and my story as I share it, because we're all in relation with each other. And so I thought it fitting that I should have my own storybook, because it's a story of wonder, a story of tears, a story of complete tragedy, and also a story of transcendence and of healing and alignment with the desires. And we get off track on that quite a bit. But my life, my journey is a part of all of us sitting here today as well. And so I start my story as most stories start. Once upon a time, there was a child, a young girl. She was creative. She was a visionary. She loved life. She had a great family, a great childhood. She always sought love and acceptance, because that's what we're all looking for, is love and acceptance. And yet she was often misunderstood. She felt this disconnect. And a lot of us can relate to that. Is I have a great life, but I also feel like there's a disconnect. So this young child, myself, grew up in a great home, a great life, doing the things that children are supposed to do. and being in some ways even shut down to some of the creativeness and the visionary and the dreaming nature that was a part of me. And so as an adult, there's one thing that I realized that has never changed. I am a dreamer and a seeker, which has become my mantra for my whole life, that the only difference between a huge dream and reality are the action steps in between. And so how my story starts, my adult story is, going through my 20s, I did what 20-year-olds do. You go to college, you graduate, you get a job, and then what do? You look for a husband. You go out on the seeking, right? And finally, at about the age of 28, I found Randy, my first husband. But this is where the story changes. A month and a half before we were to get married, Randy was diagnosed with leukemia. Mind you, we had a wedding of 425 people planned in a month and a half. And instead of enjoying that time up to our wedding, we drove down to the University of Minnesota across the river here for his treatments for leukemia. He was in the hospital for a month, the whole month before our wedding, so we didn't even know if we would get to our wedding day. And thankfully, about a week and a half before our wedding, he was discharged in remission. And so we had this glorious wedding that didn't quite look like it was supposed to, but it was a glorious day nonetheless because we were on the road to recovery. And what happened then, as a part of my story, was a journey of the process of going through treatment for cancer. Just when we think we have our life situated, something slams a door, and your life changes forever, and the dreams that you have are now seem to be out of alignment or apart from what you thought your life would look like. And so how Randy's story ends is we spent a lot of really great time in, even in the hospital. We had some great times together. And he went through treatments, and he also went through remission. So we were able to go on trips. And in the short period of time that we were together, he taught me many, many things. Even though it was only 3.5 years of our lives together, it changed my path forever. And sometimes we have to shift exactly how we thought our life was going to go. And so Randy was re-diagnosed with cancer a year later. And as you can guess, what happened was he did not make it through some complications of the bone marrow transplant and passed away on January 3rd, 2003, now 15 years ago. And just when you think that your heartbeat or your drum that you're dancing to couldn't beat any slower, you feel like it stops. And at that point, you feel like you are not even strong enough to feel your own rhythm anymore. What is my life going to look like now? Everything that I had planned will never, ever be the same. And I remember leaving the hospital that day thinking, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. This is a cruel joke. We were just married for a year, and now he's gone. I don't want to be alone. But sometimes this is where life takes us. Not standing strong, but like this, on our knees. Because we just don't know what we're going to do. But then we get back up. And I remember certain pivotal things that are really, really important for me to remember now, and I still think about it. I remember walking out of the cemetery after burying Randy, after his funeral, and there were families standing beside me, and it was a cold winter day, and I can't remember who was there, because as you know, when you go through tragedy, everything is a blur. You can't even feel your heartbeat, much less like live through the day. That's what it is. It's the raw emotion of just living through the day. My favorite part of the day became going to bed at night, because that's when I could escape the reality of what I had to wake up to every morning. And when I walked out of out of the cemetery, I remember saying one sentence over and over again. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And nobody had an answer. I was actually hoping that the people, my loved family and friends, would actually say something. But the truth is, nobody knows what you're going to do in that moment of crisis, in that moment of complete tragedy, when you are down on your knees. And so you do. You just keep doing. You keep living, and a lot of times it's surviving apart from dancing to the beat of your own drum. It seems like it's worlds apart at that point. But the beauty of it is, when you go through such complete tragedy, you also have a chance to shift. And all of us have been there. There's a chance to shift. And so what happens next was surprising to me more than anybody. Randy had a business. It's called Egg Venture Feed and Seed in Watkins, which is down Highway 55 if you go far enough out of the country. I was an insurance agent, he had the feed business. The only time we ever talked about his business, or mine, was our dinner time chatter of how did your day go? And all of a sudden, in the midst of tragedy, everybody was looking to me to say, what are you going to do with his business? I don't know. And actually, the decision was made for me in a roundabout way. One of the vendors that worked with our company he came to visit my house when family and friends were there, and he said, just to let you know, I'm telling everybody that you're taking over. And you know, I should go back and tell him that that is why I stepped in, because I didn't think that was an option. And sometimes in life, we're all faced with the fact that we just have so much overwhelm that it doesn't seem possible that we're ever going to be able to accomplish this. A woman owning a feed business. I remember living on a farm, but not really paying attention because it really wasn't a part of what I thought my drum was, to feed cows and do that. You know, I wanted to get the cattle fed as soon as possible so that I could go hang out with my friends. That was about the awareness I had about living on the farm, or get our work done so that I could do something else. And so when I came to own this feed business, I knew nothing. I didn't have a roadmap. We didn't really have a time in our short marriage to sit down and even make a plan of what do you have, what do you have, what would happen. And I remember before we went into the hospital for the final time to go through the bone marrow transplant, Randy wasn't a planner. So I said, I want you to sit down with me and tell me what's going to happen to me and to your business if you don't come home with me. Because they tell you going in that 25% of the people don't make it out alive. And Randy was one of those 25%, unfortunately or fortunately. There is life beyond us, as we know, and beyond this world. I thought it was the end of my life. And in many of the ways, it felt like that. So in the depths of despair, I started meeting with vendors of our company. And talk about lost and alone. The whole community in a small town, as you know in small town living, they're interested in what this young lady is going to do with this feed business that she knows nothing about. Thankfully, we had a great group of customers that gave me a chance. And some of those customers, many of them, are still with me today. What I did not know was you've got to be kidding me type of information piece that I was given after I came to work at Egg Venture. The business was not doing well. As a lot of entrepreneurs do, Randy died with a lot of the information that I needed to figure out this business in his head. My first big lesson, spread out your knowledge. So we were sinking fast. It's not that we didn't have a good customer base. It's not that we didn't have good employees. Thank God we had both, and that they were protective of us because they gave us a chance. I'm fairly certain because I didn't know what margin should be and nobody did, that a lot of our customers really benefited for that first year in us not having the right pricing on things. And so going to the bank was another just heart-wrenching thing, where it's like it just made the heartbeat of my life stop, because I knew the banker would call me in and say, "What are you doing? Is this gonna start working soon? What's going on?" I hated going to the bank. I would actually talk one of my employees into going for me for the fact that I just didn't want to be there. And so I remember one day sitting in the accountant's office, and it was a beautiful, sunny summer day, and there was no sunshine and no drum beating in my heart and in my life, because it was miserable. Every day I'd wake up and my stomach would just twist, thinking, is this the day that we'll just have to shut everything down? And that accountant said something to me that changed probably the trajectory. He said, "Your back's against the wall. You might as well get out now, close shop, and be done." That wasn't an option in my mind, because we had just bought out his partner for too much money because the partnership wasn't working. So I had all of this debt. And so what would happen after I sold everything out? I would be left with a lot of debt, because I really didn't want to go down the bankruptcy option. The neat part that I didn't realize at the time is that when you have nothing to lose, it's actually a great place to build, because you're fairly fearless. You'll throw anything on the wall to see if it'll stick. And so I didn't like what that accountant was telling me. So I did what most entrepreneurs do when they don't like what's being told of them. I went and found another accountant, right? Perfect solution. And so that accountant, that new accountant, met with me monthly. I didn't know it at the time, but if your accountant is wanting monthly meetings, you're in trouble. And so we sat every month and we went through my books, and it just wasn't getting better. And I said one thing, and I remember one thing that he said back that changed my life and my mindset for the rest of the trajectory until I am here today. And so I said, sometimes we just need to know and understand how bad it could get, because that's a good baseline from where to build from. Because I was afraid to lose my home. Our home was attached to the business debt. And so I said, I know what we're trying to do, but really what I need to know is what's going to happen when this doesn't work. Because that's the pit I have in my stomach every single day. And so that day, we spent, he said, for 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen if we have to close the doors. And what I realized, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And isn't that amazing? Because it never is it? It's never as bad as you think it might be. So I was going to keep my home, and once I knew I could keep my home, which I was just young, I didn't know the rules, he said something else. So that gave me some peace, and he said something else, and he said, instead of focusing on how it won't work every single day when you get up, you wake up every day and you tell yourself, what am I going to do today to make this business fly? And it was within about 2 months of me having that different trajectory and that more positive mindset that we went from red numbers to black. And I'm not quite sure what we all did different, but that outlook and that attitude of moving and looking forward instead of like rejecting the fact that this could actually work was the difference that it made for me. But I don't stand up here today telling you that I have it all figured out. It's now been 15 years, and I can tell you one thing, you still don't want me to feed your animals. But I have smart people working around me that know how to do that. And that's what this is about, using community. And so the story continues. And like I said, most of the time, my story involves talking to businesses, talking to leadership teams. I actually started my speaking career, or whatever you want to call it, experience in congregations 15 years ago because of a pact that Randy and I made when we were in the hospital. We vowed that if someone would ask us to share our story, we would do it. The funny joke of that is that I was a pretty studious child and a pretty studious kid in school and in college. Grades mattered. For speech, did not care. Hated it. C was perfectly fine. So sometimes the universe is very humorous, and it'll give us a reason to get up on these platforms, even when we don't feel like we are a fit. And so, as the story continues, and we move beyond those first years of Big Venture, I remember the end of the season coming, the end of the year, and I went into the bank to make the deposit, feeling good that the banker would no longer want to finger me to come into his office to talk to me about how our debts were going to get paid. And then the words came, "Sandy, can you come in here for a second?" And I'm like, seriously, what could he want now? Like, things are good, and I'm processing, like, what could be going wrong now? And so I walk in timidly, and he goes, "Here you go, Merry Christmas, and good job." A part of me was like totally relieved. The other part of me was hugely disappointed. And the reason is, and I share this with you because sometimes we need to hear it when we're going through it. I really could have used the words that he said, because what I told him was, I never thought I would get through this. I never thought we could get the business back to solid ground. And he said, "We always knew you could." You know what? I needed to hear that while I was going through the dark nights of the soul in that last year. It was nice to hear it then, but I was disappointed because I really needed it that whole year before, on, because I never want to be alone, or I'm afraid to be alone. When you're leading, as most of us do in one context or another, as a parent, in our work, it is a lonely, lonely spot. And sometimes you just need to be told that we know, and I know that you can do this, and you're doing a good job. It's something that we don't hear enough. And so as the story continues, the neat part about working with leaders and so on is you get to question and answers at the end of a session. And of course, you know, you have to keep your spiritual mix out of the flair of the business world for the most part. The question and answer period I always love, because someone will say when you're sharing your story, well, how did you get through it? What were the most important pieces of you getting through this? And I always love that question because this is how I answer it. I can't tell you the answer without telling you how important having a spiritual connection in one sort or another is, and the power of a greater force than me. Because when you are at end of the rope, hope, what else is there? And usually there's not a follow-up question, but it was my way to plumb that in. And so after huge tragedy, after you've been down on your knees, you get another shot if you choose to take it. And sometimes I am derailed also. I'm living outside of dancing to the beat of my own drum often, and more often than I'd want to admit. And if we're all true to ourselves, more often than we all want to admit. It's a constant shifting back. And so the next step, I feel, is you take an assessment. Okay, this happened to me. It's a part of my past. It has molded me. It still comes up on days. On bad days, it still derails me. This many years later, it probably will, because it has been such a solid force in my life. How could that little period of time affect me this much that many years later? And it does. And it's okay. But if you take an assessment, sometimes we're holding on to old stories and old beliefs that are not serving us anymore. I have them, we all do. So I ask you, and I ask myself, what old stories are no longer serving me, that are helping me stay in this comfortable position that maybe isn't a part of me aligning and thriving? There are many. You know, and maybe we go home today and we do an analysis of that as like, what old stories have I been believing for all of my life that aren't true anymore? They're just not true anymore. But I choose to keep them because in order to not have them, I would have to shift and I would have to change and perhaps even heal from it to bring myself to a higher level. And what mindsets do I need to shift? And in this assessment, one of the things that is really, really important that I've done, that I was suggested to do, is you grieve the life that you thought you would have. You grieve the life you thought you would have because we get so disappointed and we get so frustrated that things didn't work out the way we see it working out for other people and the way we see it working out for someone else. And the way we thought, we envisioned our big dream in our head has all of a sudden been derailed from a larger force than what we had expected. And it has brought us to our knees. So it's okay to spend time grieving the life you thought you would have, because that life you thought you'd have is no longer available. But perhaps it's even better. Perhaps that's what makes us perfectly broken and then perfectly available to someone else that might need your story, even when you don't feel like you're strong enough to share it. And my favorite part of all of this is then we move into the next thing, dreaming. As adults, we don't often get a chance to dream enough. We take our story and we start living somehow out of alignment and in someone else's story, what someone else thinks they want for our life, what someone else thinks we should do for a career. You see this fairly often with children graduating from high school. Their parents are directing their career path more than the artsy person they might want to be. But what happens is that we start, or we keep, drumming on an old drum that's no longer serving us. We keep beating to the rhythm that's not even aligned with who we are, to our own heartbeat. And those types of things can make your heart stop too. It doesn't always have to be a huge tragedy, because getting misaligned and misdirected are a huge thing. So we have to be ourselves, don't we? We have no choice. I have to be me authentically. And so this next part of dreaming is a meditation. And here's my fourth confession, I guess. Many of you have heard of the future self meditation, where you go into a future period of time and you have a conversation with yourself 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now to really think about who am I at now to who am I going to be. Well, my confession is I made up a meditation. So there's that. So I ask you today to participate for the next 10 minutes in a meditation that I call your present and perfect self. So I've adjusted it because sometimes the person standing here is a little bit out of alignment from our present and perfectly broken self. And so if we can make those two match again, we go forward with a new reality and maybe just a little shift that's going to affect the rest of everything else. And so I ask you to trust this process for the next 10 minutes and participate in whatever way that you feel comfortable. And so we begin. Since you are in a place of security and love and are feeling safe and comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths and let your body relax. Let go of the stress and the worries that you have brought with you today. Just for a while today, you have no problems. no worries. For this present moment, all of your worries are gone. Enjoy the way that feels. To have nothing to worry about, no stress or obligations or challenges. Enjoy the way it feels to have relaxation moving through your body. We take time out of our busy day to just relax and free our mind and thoughts. Relax and enjoy the feeling, the experience of peace and calm. If you hear sounds in the room or outside the room, they are natural noises occurring in the background. They will not bother you or distract you. If you hear anything, the sounds will just fade and become part of the background. Now imagine your favorite park or beautiful outdoor setting. Walk slowly and peacefully around. Notice the smell of the trees and flowers, the feeling of the gentle, warm breeze on your face, the afternoon sun hitting your skin and warming it, the sense of awe and beauty at what you see around you. There are no worries in a place like this. It's peaceful and serene. You are radiant, calm, and confident, and content. You see a bench in the distance, and as you approach, you notice a radiant, beautiful person sitting there peacefully. As you walk closer, you see that it is you, your true, perfect, and authentic self. Someone you may not know well, or someone with whom you may have become disconnected. As you walk even closer, your present and perfect self lovingly invites you to come and sit next to them. Notice the way your present self welcomes you into this time and place, your real self, alive, aligned, and flourishing in every area of your life. Feel how your present self compassionately places their arm around you as you sit and chat. As you see the face of your present and perfect self, what do you notice? They may look different than how you actually feel about yourself, or how you usually feel about yourself. Take in their true essence, their true radiance, their wonderful and perfect self. Get a sense of this feeling of pure love, wisdom, knowing, and wellness. Settle in and make yourself comfortable on the bench. As you sit, begin by asking your true and present self the following question. What is it, perfect and present self, that you want me to realize about my life, my thoughts, my mindsets, and anything else that has held me back from living in alignment with you? Take a moment and hear the answers. Listen and receive. Your present self may answer you in words or just with a feeling, maybe facial expressions or images. Listen to what your present self has to say to you. Feel what it is like to be totally aligned with the perfection of who you truly and authentically are. Notice even what feels different from the way you've been thinking, the way you've been feeling, or living out your life compared to what your present self has to say. Wow, what an amazing difference. Now ask your present self to tell you, is there anything else that you'd like to tell me about who I am being compared to you, the present and perfect self that I know I am? Listen and receive. Again, your present and perfect self may answer you in words or just with a feeling, a facial expression, or images. Listen to all that they have to say. Now ask your present self, what do I need to be most aware of to get me into alignment from where I am now to where you are? Listen to what your future self has to tell you. This is the key to alignment. Listen and receive. Again, you may be answered in words, facial expressions, or by giving a certain warm feeling. Perfect. You feel secure, appreciated, loved, and understood for who you truly are. You are feeling alive, free to be, and released from the old stories, false pretenses, pressures, and stresses of trying to live a life that is not aligned to who you wonderfully are. Now go ahead and ask your present self any other questions about anything you would like to ask, big or small. You can ask about a dilemma, a tough situation in your life, or anything else on which you'd like to hear their perspective. Listen and receive. Now, with a loving hug, bring your visit with your present and perfect self to a close, knowing that you can come back and visit them at any time. Thank your present and perfect self for the wisdom and guidance they've offered you as a gift. This is your inner wisdom, your heartbeat, your true and perfect self. Your perfect self may have some final parting words for you. Receive the final messages and say goodbye with a hug. Gently rise from the bench and begin to walk through the park. As you walk slowly and peacefully through the park, notice the smell of the trees and flowers, the feelings of the warm, gentle breeze on your face, the afternoon sun hitting your skin and warming it. The sense of awe and beauty of what you see, and the new wisdom, appreciation, and security you now have within. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Gently and calmly, inhale and exhale again. Slowly open your eyes with an appreciation for your new wisdom, your new calmness, and acceptance of yourself. Isn't it wonderful? Is there anything anyone wants to share that they've experienced? I was given a rule to get the microphone to the person who wants to
If
speak.
you have any questions or what you experienced,
Questions or comments? Would love to hear them.
I've got my stocking feet on because I'm so comfy from meditating.
I was wondering if you've ever heard of anyone's perfect present self be mean to them when they sat next to them.
I have not, but this is you never know what's going to happen in a meditation. So I think that's something for you to process.
They weren't mean to me, but I kind of expected they might be.
Oh,
And I was
interesting.
kind of afraid the person would be.
I'm sure we all have our own opinion of what that could be. Mine would say, I am so hard on myself. And so we expect when we meet our perfect and present self that we would be met with some sort of resistance. And if you think about that, how hard are we on ourselves? That keeps us from the dancing of our own heartbeat as well. Great question. Anyone else have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you for that exercise. I have something to say, and then for the future, but then also a comment as far as what I went through in the meditation. So, first of all, I'm excited to explore more into that meditation, and maybe even take a walk to the park to meet my perfect self, if you will. But during that meditation, one thing I experienced when I sat down to my perfect self was I asked, why do I have to have at times sorrow or pain, or even guilt or anything like that that takes me out of my higher self?
Mm-hmm.
And my higher self says, you don't. And I said, well, why do I have to exist? And it said, you don't, in the sense that I don't have to be that, I can just be the higher self. So thank you again for
awesome.
For the exercise.
Well, thank you, and that's just a perfect addition to the message and part of our journey, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then one quick question for you. Maybe I missed the first part, but how did that? So this was your meditation you came up with, or?
Yeah. Well, I took it. I took pieces from the Future Self meditation, and I just recreated it. Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me asking, how did that come to you? Did you have like a? Did it just come randomly?
Yeah. Yes. I wish I could say it was downloaded somehow.
Yeah.
I sat by my computer. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I literally wrote it out within 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I wish it was more profound than that, but maybe that's the most profound of all.
I think it's very profound. Yeah.
Well, thank
very well
you.
done. So.
Anyone else with a quick comment? I know we're at this. Thank you. I love participation. And after we wrap here, if anyone has anything
we've got
else,
one more
okay,
comment
they
or
want to
two.
share, I'd love to hear more. Okay.
Yeah, I just read yesterday about what you talk about, but I reading from Sai Baba. If you know Sai Baba, this avatar, Indian avatar. Sai Baba talk about a lot about what we talk about. It's about mind. Our mind always plays this game,
Yes.
and very hard. Just try to be. It's part of our body, mind, of
Yeah.
course,
Mm-hmm.
very important part, mind. But it's all mind game.
Yes. Mind games.
Mind games.
Mhm.
It always mind. It kind of structure who is not real structure. It's creative for play this game. It is not even our.
Yes.
This is always mind. If you understand what is mind, was who we are, it's always mind game. It's always make provocation. And why we so hard about ourselves.
Yes.
It's just our mind, not who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And this, if you understand about this metaphysical knowledge about mind, you can just tell, okay, mind, shut up and something play, just make humor about our mind. And about use
Pretty
a lot
amazing.
of humor.
Mm-hmm.
In life, you use more humor about it. You understand about who we are, kind of metaphysically who we are. So you can just always kind of talk with your mind, just leave me alone, and
Yes.
something about humor.
Thank you. Very good. Any other comments? One thing that I would add is when I feel my heart in pain, we all have ways that we cope. Mine was that I would just really get busy working, which served me well to fix my business. But I always thought, like, if I draw a line right here, I can exist up here in my mind. That's easy, you know, like the logic of it. But when you drop down to your heart is when you truly get in alignment, but that's where you might have to feel something that you're even afraid to feel, or afraid to stand up here and tell anyone about, because you never know what's going to come up. And the trickery of our mind, I don't have to tell anyone here, is a huge part of why we get out of the drum, beating the drum of our own life. Great. Again, I love hearing your stories and what you went through the own visualization. If we had more time, I'd have you get in a group and share that way. So thank you for participating. And so what I would propose to all of us is that it's time. It's time. The world needs us to be dancing in total alignment and to the beat of our own rhythm, our own drum. And what does that mean for you? How is that different? Perhaps how is that different from even when you walked in to this service this morning? It doesn't always have to be this profound, huge thing that we start doing. Sometimes it's those little action steps along the way that get us to our large dream. And many, many, many times, it isn't that quantum leap. It's that knowing what the great dream is and being okay with holding on to it. Even when others tell you your back's against the wall or that you can't do it. And so we wrap today the same way we began, with the story. Because the story continues every day, every minute, every hour. A new paragraph, a new chapter of our lives is written. If we receive, and if we stay and be all right with being me, authentically and perfectly, our perfect and present self, even and because our perfect self is perfectly broken. So you stand in your heart space and you give your story to the world, because even if it's only one person at a time, you never know the ripple effect of what you're going to do in the lives of others. And so my parting thought to you is dance like you've never danced before, because the world needs you to do that. The world needs you to dance to the beat of your own drum like you never have before. The end.
Thanks, Sandy Wolff. That was.
As we go forward today and every day for the rest of our lives, we ask God, Creator, Universe, to bless our path and help us to live in our perfect and present self, truly aligned with who you want us to be and who you have planned for us to be. We ask for the courage and the bravery to stand strong even when we feel weak or when we are on our knees. Guide us and lead us to all that you have ready in our full and beautiful and fully aligned self, dancing to the beat of your drum. Amen.
Thank you.